Hello to all of you 1314 web students. I'm recording this video to maybe address some of the questions that I've been asked and just give you a little overview of the course that's a little more in-depth than the welcome video that I sent you. So first, here is our syllabus, and I'm just going to scroll down to the part I really want to talk about. I am available different times throughout the week, so feel free to send me remind messages, or if we can, we want to meet and collaborate. So a couple of things. One is there's this thing about inclusive access. All right, we use Red Shelf. We use Red Shelf to get that set up, and I'll point to where that's set up in Blackboard in just a moment. Actually, let's go ahead and look at that now. So if I click over here to our course, so here I'm under the Unit 0 course introduction, where you see introducing yourself to the class. Well, right below that, we have directions for redeeming an access code. So you'll actually click this video if you want to see it walked through, and then there's this Red Shelf link. So if you follow the instructions there, you'll eventually acquire an access code. It actually has a button that says acquire code. You want to copy and paste that code or write it down, and then you want to make sure, if you haven't already, that you go over to MyLab Math Homework, and it's going to have you make an account. So you'll click either one of these, will take you to the same place. You'll have to make an account, use your Kilgore College email address. That's kind of important. Don't use a personal email address, use your Kilgore College email address, and then at some point it will ask you for your access code, and then you can paste or type in that access code. That is where all of your homework is found. Okay, that's why this tab says homework. So I'll go back to the syllabus and address the next thing here. So the thing I really want to talk about is our grading system, because it is a little different. Some people call this growth grading. I heard someone refer to it as mastery grading. It's kind of how our class is going to function. So you will be able to get satisfactory ratings, or I call them S's, but satisfactory ratings, you'll be able to get up to 72 of them, up to 72 possible satisfactory ratings in our course. So 36 of those come from objective checks, which I'll show you in just a moment. 14 of those can come from homework. 4 of those come from attendance, which in your class really is the discussion posts. And then the final objective check, that's our final exam, has 18 that are possible. And so depending on how many S ratings you accumulate, you may have one of these. An A is 65 to 72 of them, a B is 58 to 64 of them, a C is 51 to 57, etc. Now you might be wondering, how do I get those? If that's how I get my grade, then how do I earn those S ratings? Well, objectives are the biggest way to get those. So every time you take an objective check, I'm going to go down a list, and here's actually the list of objectives. There's a list of objectives for solving equations, the unit that we're in right now. There are 7 objectives in this. So what's going to happen is when you take your objective check next week, there will be about 7 questions. There's going to be an honor code, so 8, 9, something like that. So you'll go and take this, and each one of these, I'm going to look at some of the questions that are labeled EQ1, and I'm going to say, do they know how to solve linear equations in one variable, or do they not? There's 3 possible ratings. You can receive an S rating, an S minus, which means, man, you're so close that I think you should be able to correct this, and so you can always go back and correct those. I won't usually tell you why or what you have to correct, but there will be something really small. You got a sign mixed up, you added instead of subtracted. Usually it's something really straightforward that you can find. And then the third rating that you could receive is an N, which is not satisfactory. Okay. Now you want to remember which things are N's. Okay, so that's why there is a tracking sheet down here for you to mark your ratings as you go. Okay, so you'll take your objective check, and sometime in the next day or 2 after that, I'll send you the ratings through email, and that's how you get those. Okay, so not too bad. So, but the thing to remember is that I'm only counting the S ratings. If you get an S minus or an N, that doesn't actually count toward the number of S ratings you have. So just always keep that in mind. All right, let's see, back to the syllabus. For homework, your average on MyLab Math homework for assignments determines how many S ratings you get. You can accumulate all 14 S ratings if you have a 100% of your homework. It's not impossible. It does take a little bit of time to get there. An A, if you have an A from 90 to 99, so not 100, then you can get 13 of those S ratings. If you have 80 to 89% of those, you get 9 S ratings. 70 to 79, you receive 5 S ratings for that. 60 to 69, you get 1 of the S ratings, and then anything from 0 to 59, you don't receive any because you haven't really been satisfactory. been successful in it, okay? Then your attendance, which again, attendance for you really means discussion posts. Actually, let's just skip from there. So really, you have 4 discussion posts. Each one of those is an S rating. That's kind of how that comes out for up to 4. And then the final objective check, your final exam, it's your last chance to show that you've learned each objective, and every objective we've covered is on it. So any objective you've been successful, that you're successful on that final objective check, gives you 0.5 S ratings, half of 1. If it's the first time that you've been successful, then it actually applies to the objective check category as well as the final, so it counts for 1.5 S ratings. So the thing that I am really passionate about is that you learn this material and that you get it by the end of the course. The reason that I'm letting it count on the final for the objective checks, kind of going back to your exams or whatever, the reason I'm letting you do that is because I think that if you've learned it, then you should get credit for it. I think that just makes sense. So now let me show you something in Blackboard that will really help you get ready for those objective checks, since they are a big thing in our course. So you see these tabs over here. Right under My Lab Math Homework, there's one that says Objective Checks. I'm going to click on that. And there are a few things you'll see. You won't see this one, it's hidden. But you'll see Practice Objective Checks, a folder, and you'll see Objective Check 1. So I'm going to go ahead and just open the objective check so you can see what the real thing looks like. Not too bad. It's going to ask you to start first. I guess I may have to reset it because I'm a teacher. Okay, student preview, and it looks like this. When you're adding work, make sure that you're adding pictures or PDFs in the right places on the questions. There's an honor code where I have to type my name. There is EQ1. You can see the titles up here. EQ2 through 5 are on this one, EQ6 and EQ7. So there's a grand total of 9 questions on this, including the honor code. Now, I want to point out specifically EQ2. EQ2, there are 4 methods, or EQ2 through 5 that is. There are 4 methods you can solve quadratics with. There's the factoring method, square root property, completing the square, or the quadratic formula. Now these are scrambled up. One of these is in the right form for the quadratic formula. One of them is set up for completing the square. One of them is set up for factoring, and one of them is set up for whatever the other one was that I just said. Completing the square, quadratic formula, square root property, and factoring. One of those for each of those. Now you get to pick which method you use on this one. And this applies just specifically to this objective, or these objectives. So you get to choose what method. So I think this one is set up for the square root property, right? Because I can just take the square root and get rid of the square. So when I add work on here, choose my file for that, it's a picture or whatever, I want to write on the side the squared, the quantity squared told me I should use the square root property. Okay, that's part of the objective. And so this one would count for your square root property objective, which was objective EQ3. So there's this thing right here, it says these won't be identified individually. That's what I'm showing you right now. So if I think this one factors, then I say, all right, I'm going to write a note. This one, I could find numbers that multiplied to be 72 and added to be negative 17. So factoring seems like a good idea. So each one of those you want to justify that. This one is set up for completing the square because it's got the x squared plus bx equals c. It's in the right form for that. And then this last one, because I already used that one, factoring here, this is probably going to be quadratic formula. So they're scrambled up though, so just note that you have to figure out which method you're going to use before you actually do each one of those. So then you could get 7 S ratings out of this objective check. Now, let's just say you want to practice those. So I just showed you some questions, but you don't know if the answers are right. So I'm going to click on the practice objective checks, and there's only one that you'll be able to see. It's practice for EQ1 to EQ7. So if I open that, I'm going to reset this one so that I can look at it fresh. These problems are for personal review or study purposes only. They will not be graded, so do not attach work unless you're practicing that function. I'm not going to actually look at the work for this. So I look through here and there's these questions. Well, let's just say I think the answer is 6. Okay, well I got it wrong. Well, I can try this question again. I believe it's 3 times. And then that goes away. I can't submit it again. Well, I can say, get a similar question. I can try another one. So this is a practice mode is what this is. And these are all questions. These are actually the same questions, just not the same numbers. They're in the same pools, I guess you'd say, for the real objective check. Now what I want to point out on this page though is EQ2 to EQ5, these are in order. In the practice they're in order, okay? So the questions are in order by strategy required but will not be on the objective check. So this one is factoring, this one's the square root property, this one's set up for completing the square, and this one is set up for the quadratic formula. So you want to keep that in mind. And then there is a space to say, hey, if you didn't say why you picked which one, tell me. I did, question 6 was factoring because question 7 was, so you have space to justify yourself. But this practice set is not really for a grade per se. I don't think I'm going to specifically ask you, but if I ask you specifically to submit some of those, then it's a grade. But otherwise, they're not graded. They're just for you to practice these things. So the last thing is the final objective check. Again, that'll look just like what we were just looking at, except it will be longer because it has every objective on it. You'll have more time for that as well. So one thing to note that you didn't get to see there is that if I go back to, if I'm looking at my calendar, which I'm going to go open that right here. If I go look at my calendar, you might notice something funny. So you may be comfortable now with the first one, how that's going to look. But the second one will look a little different because looking at a calendar, and this will be the same for every class that I teach, when you see something like objective check 2A or 2B, most of the time I didn't put it here apparently, but I want to put something like this, plus objective check 1. Okay, so you can optionally go back and reassess the ones that you didn't get satisfactory ratings on before. So really, there are a lot of chances to show that you've mastered the material, and I hope that you will take advantage of all of those various opportunities. Please ask me questions as we go because, like I said, this is a little different. But I think that it has the potential to be a really great thing for your learning and your education. So I hope that I've answered a lot of questions about the grading system. And again, email me, send me a remind message, all of those things when you have questions. All right. Bye.